So tonight we are tying the Gamechanger. And again, I mentioned this earlier, but if everyone can just hover on the picture of or the picture next to my name, a little box should pop up that says "Pin this" to your screen. So if everyone could click on that, you'll see is me, no matter who is talking. You'll see my voice, I should say. So okay, so Gamechanger, it's actually less of a particular fly and more of a platform. Um, and invented by Blaine Chocolate, who's a big musky fly guy in the South. Just came out with a book, as we were just talking about. Awesome book, little pricey, I will admit, but a really great read and really informative as to how to tie a game changer and how to fish it, frankly. Um, so I mean, basically the name's kind of cool, but he came up with this to in the pursuit of imitating something that looks very realistic swimming in the water. And and what it was I guess an evolution over time, kind of starting with the gummy minnow, but really, long story short, we ended up with a game changer, which is basically a multi-articulated fly. You can tie these with multiple hooks. One hook's tonight. We're going to be using one hook. I've actually kind of gotten away from using multiple hooks when I'm tying. Not to go down the rabbit hole too much on that, but I kind of feel like my it's less damage to the fish, and my hookup rate's actually better on a single hook. And in terms of and less fouling, certainly, for sure. But anyway, so as I mentioned, this is a system. And again, if everyone could go on mute unless you're talking, asking a question, and please do ask questions, comments, etc. So there's as Dave was just talking, there's a lot of
Rob, Rob,
yeah.
I'm sorry. How do I get you on full screen again?
So click on. So if you hover over the picture next to my name on the right, under attendees. So if at the top, click on the people icon. And next to my name, you should see a picture. And then click on that picture, and it'll say pin. And if you pin me, it'll show me your full screen.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So I mentioned this is a system. And really, you can use actually a number of materials, as you'll see tonight, for the actual fly. But at the heart of its system are these things, fish spines. And so this is what provides the articulation. You're gonna have like a little picture on the back of kind of what we're tying here. And these are really key in the system. And these are, well, I'm not going to say hard to find. They're really easy to find online, but there's only one of them. Fly Tier's Dungeon used to have available these fish joints, which are almost the same thing, and they actually come in very similar sizes, especially in the larger sizes. But I don't know what the deal is. Maybe they just sold out, but he has not had these in stock for some time, these fish joints. So your Game in Town is the only Game in Town of these. They work well. They're a little pricey. A bag of these is about $8, unless you tie a bunch of flies. But again, you're going to pay $16, $15 to buy a feather changer like we're tying tonight. And so you can use a number of materials. It doesn't have to be so. Blaine Chocolate has, he's put his stamp on this. Great product. He's got a number of chenilles out there. I'm going to be using one of his branded chenilles tonight. There's other things out there. I mean, you can use polar. It's basically kind of a polar chenille. Maybe a little longer fiber, but it's very similar to a polar chenille. You can use feathers. You can use craft fur. It's more about the technique and the system. But again, these fish shanks are really kind of what is key to the whole deal. They come in a variety of sizes, right? So I'm going to be using 15 millimeters tonight. They come in big to small. They come in micro sizes if you want to be trout. And they come even like the Fly Tires Dungeon has these super huge, extra long ones too. If you're tying really big flies, the fly size that we're tying tonight, these are great smallie flies. The size we're going for even steelhead, pike, and kind of maybe on the smaller end of musky flies, but certainly would work for that. So this is more of bigger fish flies we're tying tonight, but they have the really short shanks that you can use for trout as well, and the action in the water in these is incredible. So when I say a system, you can use all kinds of materials. So for example, and they all have different crazy names, right? So we're tying a feather changer tonight. There's also a finesse game changer, which I don't know why I call it finesse, but it's all synthetic. This is a finesse game changer I tied up. It's all chenille, but some things they have in common is the articulation, right? So you see the movement on this thing is crazy, and when you cast these in the water, it's awesome. It looks like it's swimming. I mean, go look at videos online of this. The other thing when you're tying this to keep in mind that we'll get into is the taper of the fly, right? So this is tapered to look like a minnow. And then again, this is obviously black. You can tie it in a bunch of different colors. Here's a feather changer I tied up. This is similar. We'll do it a little different color, but this is kind of an olive and black one I tied up. But again, there's a taper to this, and I'll show you how you do that. But it's the system, right? I mean, you can kind of see the articulation. It's a little hard to see, but I mean, these are all shanks connected together, and so it's really about the movement in the system, less so about the materials. Now, if you want to get specific, there are some materials that do make your life easier. So Blaine Chocolate actually comes out under his name anyway. Finesse chenille. So I tried a finesse game changer. This is chenille. This is the exact chenille I used, and it's sized right. It's sized appropriately. This is 1.25 inch. To be honest, could you use any sort of 1.25 inch synthetic shiny chenille? Sure, but this works really well. So if you want to, what I recommend is if you're going to tie a couple different colors, and you like the chenille. If you don't have a pile of chenille already, buy a black, buy a white, and maybe buy a chartreuse, and you're good to go. You can tie up a whole bunch of these. These finesse changers, they sell for about $8. So again, you're gonna, if you tie up a few of these with the materials you get, you're gonna well earn the money back. These do take a while to tie, so losing them, if you're paying for them or tying them, sucks. I mean, snagging them on the bottom sucks, but these big streamers, you don't necessarily lose a lot of them. So I mentioned different sizes of spines. One thing that I really like is these, they call them tail shanks. And so again, they come in different sizes, but I like these tail shanks for making the tail. And you'll see that kind of where that comes into play. It's a little nicer than kind of burning one of your long shanks and having to cut it down and everything. So so that's what we're going to start with. And so we are tying a feather changer tonight. I'm going to do, it's kind of a white and purple combination, very similar to one that's in the book. He has a white and red combination, but I'm going to do white and purple. So, okay, so first thing I start with is, this is the tail section. It's little, right? So you put it in your vise, and you got to be kind of, especially in these regals, you got to be a little careful so you're, if you get it too close to the edge, you're going to launch this across the room. Anyone who owns a regal has experienced that at some point. And if you haven't, you're a liar. Okay. So you can make the tail out of a number of things. Again, I'm just trying to be simple tonight and not use super complex materials. And so my tail is actually going to be marabou. And this whole fly is going to be, you'll see, pretty long at the end of the day. So, if you want to start with feathers in the tail, you can. That's great. But I'm just using good old-fashioned, oops, just like that. Launched it. Okay, got another one here. So find that later.
Rob, every vise launches those things.
I've never had a problem on my Renzetti.
You should see the micro ones.
Oh yeah,
I actually found one on the floor the other day. I couldn't believe it. The thing is so small I could barely see it. But if you get a light in there, you'll find it. But
yeah, that stinks launching these because they're not the cheapest things in the world.
No.
Okay. So And you don't have to use super heavy thread in this. I mean, you can tie deer head ones, and you can get all kinds of fancy stuff on this, but I'm just using 140 denier white thread, so basically 6/0. So, start your thread on the hook, and the nice thing about these, if you have a concern with crowding your eye, the eyes in these things, at least in the bigger flies, are so big that crowding the eye is generally not a problem. So you'll be okay. And I'll talk about some of the components as I kind of build this fly out here too. So we're just getting started. This is the tail. I have some white marabou. And what I like to do, and I might have gone over this before, but my original fly tying instructor showed me this. The wispy ends on here. I mean, if you cut it, you lose style points, right? I mean, that's not good. A little bright. So adjust that light a little bit. And so what I do is you can do things. You can kind of grab it and pluck it with your fingers to get that, get some of the wispiness off and get a better defined edge. Or grab yourself some scissors, long scissors, put your marabou up to the edge of your scissors and just nick it off like that, and you have a much better defined edge without looking like you cut it. Again, so and on this, I'm not trying to do a particular measurement. This is going to be a big fly, right, in terms of length, and so we're just going to start with our marabou, wrapping it on our tail shank segment. Right, marabou can be slippery stuff, and so I do a couple turns over, pick it up, do a turn under to really lock that marabou in there so it doesn't turn. The other thing you're going to see on this is I use a lot of glue or head cement. Again, in effect you're tying a whole bunch of. You're tying each individual segment, so you're tying, not quite a whole bunch of individual flies, but sort of. And so, to improve durability, I do use head cement on these bigger flies. Right, and that's the start of our tail. Simple as that. You can get fancy. You can put a feather on here and start putting flashy stuff on there, but I'm trying to keep this pretty simple. So I'm just going to do marabou, and then I'm going to whip finish it. 5-turn whip finish. Get rid of that. And if that's not in focus or anything, guys, just holler. Okay, and then I mentioned head cement. So I'm going to cement each one of these segments. So I just take a little bit of head cement and put it on the wraps. Okay, my first segment. So then I take myself, I'm using, so on these feather changers, I find that you use a little bit longer shanks. That they come in, as Dave said, 6-7 millimeter shanks for the micro stuff, all the way up to 30 millimeter, maybe even bigger. But I'm using 15 millimeter. So to build up the segments with these feather changers, I've tried using like the small ones at like 10, and it doesn't work that great. There's too much stuff on here. But I find 15 is a pretty good size. And I don't know if this is the better way to say it is, so in his book he kind of advocates for at least 6 to 7 sections on these flies. I find that if you use a tail plus about 5 segments, that works just fine. So all I did is, if you can, maybe I should do that, but so each of these eyes, so these have all I did is I just looped that segment through the eye of that previous segment. And so these all have, you guys can see it, kind of a way, no tying and thread required. You loop it through the segment and you're on to the next one. It's a wire-to-wire connection, actually. So you don't have to worry about each segment fouling the last. So these are actually pretty ingenious fly. Okay, a couple tips as I go through this. One thing I learned, so you put your segment in, put your next segment in, start your thread. So you want to go far enough back where there's only a small hole available. And when you're using these kind of shanks, you want to keep a decent amount of thread tension, because if you're too loose, what's going to happen is your thread is going to kind of all bunch up towards the front, and that's no good. But you want to be, you want to kind of, if you kind of see, I have it in there kind of on the very edge on purpose, because what we're going to do, we tie the materials in, they're going to overlap back on the previous shank, and you got to make sure they're close, or you have to make sure they're close enough to be able to do that. Because if you tie them in, halfway up, they're never going to overlap, and you're going to have a big gap there. So, for example, one of my earlier game changers, my first attempts, I didn't tie it back enough, and you can kind of see there's more of a gap there, versus tying it when I got it figured out. There's less of a gap, and so it just looks a little nicer. Do the fish care? No, but again, style points. So, but you have to be careful, because if you go too far back, then this can't articulate, and then it ruins the action of the fly. So you want to have just enough space there. So, okay. So we're basically going to use, at least to build most of this fly, two materials, a flash and feathers. So we're going to start, and the flash is going to be kind of what holds the feathers up. And this is called filler flash. I think it actually, yes, it's another chocolate material, plain chocolate. And all it is it's a big flash, right? Double-sided, very similar to polar chenille, but I think maybe a little bit bigger. So comes in a ton. So once you get one chunk, you're good for a number of flies. Okay. So just tie in the end. Again, this is not a hard fly to tie. It requires some patience, and you'll see a bunch of repetition, but it's not difficult. So we're going to tie in our tie it by the core. And just, I guess, a word of warning. So, a lot of times on chenille, you pick out some of the fibers. I tried doing that on some of these filler flashes, and I just kind of pulled out the center, the whole middle string was coming out, and that was no good. So I've decided that I'm not going to do that, and I'll just tie it in and get some extra stuff I'll cut off later. So, okay, so you do about 3 wraps, or not about, you do 3 wraps. And again, you want to be a little bit tight on this, so a little bit of tension. And as you're wrapping, try to do your best to preen it back so you don't trap fibers down. Real easy to do on this with this stuff, right? And we're going to take a bodkin and pick it out later. And I'm doing touching wraps on the inside core. And this is pearl, by the way. So 3 of those wraps, and then I tie off my chenille or filler flash. I also like to use, for these kind of synthetics, my Fiskars, which are, $10 scissors, super sharp, and they're $10. So, and then you can kind of pull some of this stuff back and wrap it. So before I go too much further, I'm going to take my bodkin and just make sure that I'm freeing those fibers. Now, as I'm doing this, I'll talk about taper. So as I mentioned, it's important to have a taper on this. Well, these are obviously long fibers, not much of a taper. So we're actually going to trim this before moving on. Actually, I didn't do too bad. There's not too many trapped there. So, okay. So what I'll do is, you want to build this taper. And so I'm going to go through and start chopping off some of these fibers, just to, because again, this is they call it the knuckle of the fish, right? So back towards the tail. And it's not super wide. And so you want to make sure you're representing that. And so I'm just chopping these down so it will form a taper when we're all said and done. You'll see. Okay. Okay, good. Like that. Okay. You guys can see that okay? Looks a little bright my screen, but looks okay? Okay. You're welcome to come off mute for questions or just tell me if it looks like crap. So, okay. Okay. So the majority of this, the feather we're using for this fly, I should say, is a hen saddle. And not all hen saddles are created equal. So this is a whiting American hen saddle. We're doing white tonight. So the whiting Americans specifically are big hens with big feathers. So other hen saddles you can get. So I would not use a hen cape. That would be much too small. I would not use dry fly hackle because you're not going to get the right effect. I mean, don't forget, this is a wet fly, right? This is a streamer. Um, so, Whiting calls them Whiting American, or I think Met's their Magnum hen capes. So, but they're big feathers. And the trick to this is, the size of the feather you pick is going to determine the taper. And so if you kind of look at this, right, so from top to bottom, so the feathers up here at the top are going to be the smallest, and the ones down here are going to be the largest. So, we're tapering up, so we're actually going to start with feathers from back here, and then kind of slowly work down the saddle until we get to the front of the fly, which is going to have the biggest feathers.
Rob, sorry, do you remember where you bought those?
So there's a couple places I like. So I will say, as of late, any whiting product is hard to find. I don't know if it's COVID or what. Everybody's tying, perhaps. I'm not really sure. But that, and ever since his book came out, it's been about impossible to find these big hen saddles. A couple places I like online. Mad River Outfitters has a few of them. Dakota Fly Angler has a few of them.
Yeah. I mean, you're correct. They're very hard to find. I was looking last week, and I couldn't find them anywhere.
Yeah, Mad River's got a few. I was just looking today. Mad River has a few in stock.
Right.
Dakota has a couple in stock. And on eBay, again, this is just, I'm not sponsoring anybody, but people I've had good luck with. Far West Fly Shop. They're based out of California. They sometimes they sell a lot of whiting product, and they oftentimes have some stuff there too. But
Good, thank you.
But yeah, they're not easy to find. And some of these I've had. Well, actually, most of these I've had for quite some time. So I got lucky, so to speak, and bought them before they were cool. They've gone up in price too. They used to be a little bit cheaper, but they're not bad. You can get one of these for about $20, and it's going to tell you a lot of flies. And so the trick is here. You want to find you're going to be tying in two feathers at the same time. So you want to find two feathers that are about the same size, and strip off the the webby stuff. You don't have to strip off the webby stuff, but I find it creates a much, much cleaner tying point and less stuff sticking out, and so I would highly recommend it. And if you want to go through and be really efficient, you can prep these feathers before you tie your fly. I was not that efficient tonight, so I didn't. So you're left with two feathers with some stem on them. Looks kind of like that. So then what I'm going to do is tie these in by their tips. So I line them up together and preen back the tips. And so what I'm left with is this is similar to some to a lot of feathers we tie in, actually. So what I'm left with are two, if you guys can kind of see that. I know it's a little bright, but tips where I'm going to tie them in. And I will say, so oftentimes these bigger flies can be forgiving in terms of if you use too many thread wraps, etc. But again, the key is best practice tying. You don't want to use, minimize your thread wraps as much as possible, etc. So I'm tying that back in just to the edge of the flash, and I'm bringing my thread back to the front of that shank segment. So then you just pick them up. When you wrap them forward. Again, I have two feathers in here together. You can use, some people use 3 here, but I found 2 to be sufficient. So when I'm wrapping these back, so you get them kind of started here. I'm being careful not to trap fibers, and so what you want to do is take my fingers out of the way. I'm preening these back as I wrap. Right, that helps not trap the fibers down and gets them going in the right direction. And I'm going to circle these forward all the way to the front of that shank segment. And if I did this right, I'm going to have just enough. Look at that. Okay, and I will tie off my feather. So I do about 3 wraps, and then I always like to do one in front, kind of 1 or 2 in front, just a habit I developed to really lock things down. Take your fine point scissors, get rid of that. Okay, now you can take your bodkin again. And again, this is a fly that requires a little bit of patience and time, but boy, at the end it looks pretty sweet. Just got to pick out, make sure there's no trap fibers. Okay. And then I'm going to whip finish. Four or 5 turn whip finish. And then finally, again, you're gonna notice the pattern here. Some glue. Yeah, and you can use. Some people use UV resin for this, but I don't know. I find head cement to be more than sufficient for helping to improve that durability. So again, when this is in the water, right, this is going to come back and kind of hide that first part of the segment and then be, and flow together. Okay, so we continue on. So that was segment, the tail plus 1 segment. So I'm going to add another segment here. And these are really easy, right? I don't think I showed you guys before, but they just... And I'm actually using, this is Fly Tires Dungeon segments. Oops. But the Blaine chocolate ones are almost identical. I've been tying a bunch of these, so I'm running low on the Blaine chocolate ones, so I figured I'd use the Fly Tire Dungeon ones up. Yeah, I hope it gets those back in stock, because they are considerably less expensive than the official Fish Spine ones, and they're the same thing. Maybe he just has a run on them with the release of the book. I don't know. Okay, so again, you want to kind of do your best to get that towards the edge of your vise, right? Because you want to have sufficient. You want to go back sufficiently. And start your thread on the hook. Get that out of the way. And sometimes this will kind of get in the way for at least until it gets a little bit longer, which is maybe a little bit of a pain. But it's not too bad. Once you get another segment on there, it's a lot easier to keep out of the way. But I found that sometimes it flops around right in where you don't want it, so you can use your one finger to hold it back. Get rid of your thread and see. I don't have maybe a little more even. So again, I don't have a ton of space in there. I want enough where there's some movement, but I don't want a ton because I want to have as much of that overlap as possible. And with the feather changer, I found it's just naturally not as compact as the synthetic material, but that's okay. It still looks great in water. Okay, then we're back to our filler flash. So again, we're still kind of at the base of the, the base of the tail on this fish, right? So we're going to trim this filler flash yet again a little bit. We're going to trim a little bit longer this time than we did last time. Yeah, this stuff's going to be kind of a pain to work with. I wish, like I said, it would be nice if you could strip out some from the core, but I lost about, I don't know, a foot of this stuff by doing that, so I'm not doing that again. And again, you just want to do about 3 wraps. And you can tie these up without flash. So if you don't have filler flash and you have feathers, it doesn't have to have any shine to it. And actually, if you're going to fish these a bunch, I would actually recommend tying up one without any flash, because sometimes fish are jerks and they don't like flash. So I think his original feather changer actually didn't have any flash, if I recall. But these can look really cool. So I mean, if you do, I don't have these color combos offhand. Someday I will. But if you have like a like a grizzly olive and a grizzly red or a grizzly orange, you can make a really cool like fire tiger kind of fly. But like I said, hen saddles are a bit tough to come by right now. Okay, so I'm going to trim this one up as well. a little bit longer than last time. Because again, you want that tapered look. And you can see I'm not being super precise. I mean, you can, I guess if you were really precise, you could trim this prior to, you know, if you prep your materials and you could trim all these filler flashes to length prior to tie-in, which would make your life a bit easier, but I don't know. I don't really find that necessary. I think it looks just fine. Okay, so my first two feathers were from right down here. I'm just going to move up a little bit and grab two feathers that are a bit larger. And I'm looking for wide feathers. You know, if you're going through the pelt here, I mean, you want kind of the wider feathers that are decently long. And again, you know, the Whiting American is the way to go, because these are kind of the classic feather changer. I think in his book he mentions like the Metz Magnum hen saddles. Those are even harder to find, and actually more expensive. And they're the same thing as the. I'm a really big fan of Whiting products in general, as you guys know. So, okay, two feathers, same deal. So, again, this isn't a super exciting fly to watch, which is kind of why I've held off tying it for a little bit, but figure we'd give it a shot since with the release of the book and everything. That's why most people you see on YouTube that tie this, I have show the sped up version of the video, so you don't have to listen to me try to fill airtime while I'm tying this stupid thing. So guys, please, if you have any questions, feel free to chime in. Okay. Again, stripped off the fuzzies. Preening the feathers back, have my tie-in point right here. And sometimes you're going to trap down some of that filler flash stuff. It just is because it's long and goes everywhere. You can just nick it out of the way. Get it out of the way. Okay. So, oops. Again, I'm wrapping the feathers around, preening them back as I go. And I'm going to wrap this all the way to the front, right behind the eye of the shank. Okay, that's pretty good. And I tie it off. Again, you guys have seen this program before. Oops. Broke my thread.
Everybody breaks their thread.
Oh, yeah. And the other reason to add, I think, in my opinion, durability to this, in terms of the glue, is that, I mean, especially this fly is meant to go after kind of bigger, toothier critters. So, I mean, in theory, these flies can take a pretty good beating. So, okay, whip finish, head cement. Okay. Okay, next segment. We have hang with me, guys. 3 segments to go. So if you want to do 4 segments, I think that would be fine. I do think at least 5 gives a really good look to the motion of the fly.
So, Rob, while you're up to that, there's a company called Spawn Fly Fish.
Okay.
That's in Olympia, Washington. A 20-pack of 9, 10, 11, 12 is $4.50.
Really?
A 50-pack is $9.
Spawn fly fish. That's going to be my next.
SPAWN. The other thing about these guys that's very interesting is they got a lot of semi-seal stuff, and they've got some heads they're really, I think, pretty unique. And the other thing is, if you're a Norvise guy, and I'm not. They got all kinds of Norvise stuff.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I didn't know that was Spawn.
Yeah.
Are they a fly shop or their own company?
They're online. I don't think they're a fly shop. I think they're just an online company. But they've got this.
That's cool.
So they got this Spawns UV Mega semi-seal dubbing. They got a ton of that kind of stuff. Here's a bunch of rooster tail feathers from Whiting's Farm that are pretty nice. I mean, it's fairly. It's a new company, but it's fairly unique.
That's good to know.
I think.
Yeah, because I just ordered a new pack of 15 millimeter shanks because I'm getting low and it cost me like $8. So
Yeah. I think one of the things that I'm going to look at is these heads are kind of unique. You know, they're somewhat akin to the Flyman's, but they're much more. I mean, they're colored. They're not just a hunk of plastic.
nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, thanks for that, Dave. I didn't know that. Spawn fly fish. Huh?
And the other thing they got is very cool eyes.
More things I need to spend money on, apparently.
Absolutely.
Okay, again, filler flash. Which, I kind of like this product. I know it's the name brand product, but it works pretty well, I have to say. No complaints. So, I just do touching wraps, 3 of them. So, even though trout season is closed, smallmouth is not. So this is a great fly for still throwing yet this season. So it's getting a little bit, so I'm going to trim this one a little bit. Again, and this is going to be actually the last piece of filler flash I trim. From here on out, I'm just going to let it ride full length. And you notice I'm not trimming it. I'm trying to not trim it much. And again, it's the flash part. So it's not, it becomes more important how you trim on this. And actually, it's actually a much different way of trimming, which I can kind of go over at the end. But I'm not super concerned with the filler flash. So again, I'm moving on. So I continue to move down my pelt. Look for feathers that are, again, kind of slightly, even a little bit longer than the last one. Yeah, and we were talking about hard to find whiting feathers, and that's not just hen, but in general, it's really tough to find feathers right now. And I don't know, I have no idea why. I mean, I'm assuming the chickens are still growing, but I'm assuming something with coronavirus and or demand. Okay, 2 feathers, stripped off the fuzzies. I'm going to make a tie-in point at the end, again, preen them back, just like you would do for a lot of wet flies in the trout world. Again, tie in the feathers. Just palmer this. So you can preen them back. The preening thing back is pretty important. If you just try going nuts and wrapping these, you're going to trap a lot of fibers, and it's not going to look great. And so just save yourself some time and just do this one little extra step. I'll tell you what, though, if you don't have it, invest in if you're tying these with this filler flash, get yourself a little handheld vacuum for your tying desk, because holy moly, these little fibers get everywhere. Anybody going up for steelhead this season?
I've been out a couple times.
Oh, did you? Did the Brule?
Yeah.
How was it?
I went with Paul Sandstrom.
Yeah.
I've been out a couple times with him. I actually just talked to him about an hour ago. He was out fishing today. He Paul did well. I certainly enjoyed myself. I got a couple of hits, one break off, but certainly didn't get any in the net as Paul does.
Was he guiding you, or just you guys were just fishing?
Well, both. First time he was guiding me. The second time we're just fishing.
That's cool.
You know, if anybody's interested in and it's swing only, by the way, he will not nymph with you.
So I almost forgot.
But in a really in a very nice guy, very competent, incredibly good two-handed caster. And I really enjoyed him.
I've heard fishing on the Brule is pretty good this year. I almost forgot the head cement, so I just put head cement on the end of that.
Well, the only guy I saw catch anything was him. I ran into Eduardo up there.
Oh, I'm sure he fishes up there a lot.
At McNeil's, but nobody else was catching anything. So
it's funny. I'm seeing a lot of reports that people are doing really well, but I'm also seeing a lot of reports that like some guy was posting last weekend. He counted 30 cars at Bachelor's.
Oh wow, absolutely. There's a lot of cars up there. I've never gone to 4 places before 9 o'clock before I could find a parking spot.
It was that bad. Jeez.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
and I can tell you when you're going with Paul, you're all over the place because he doesn't spend any time monkeying around. So he's no, gone. So it's yeah, he's a little impatient with that, but I certainly found if you're interested, I mean he's taking guys who've never two-handed casted.
Sure.
Started with him like that.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's just yeah. The Brule, the Brule is I heard it has a lot of people lately.
Yeah. Well, it's the same, I guess, as the trout streams. I got I think I told you I got a new Paraway rod.
Yeah, you did tell me. Yeah.
Oh God.
Is it nice?
Oh, it's unbelievable. He didn't give me the line I wanted, so actually Paul had a line that we put on for one of his rods, and it matched perfectly.
Nice. You get the 7 weight, you said, or the?
It's probably a 7 weight. Well, he doesn't do them. He does them by fly line size. So, I mean, you don't really know what the weight is, but it's different than a switch rod. That's for sure.
Did you get a switch rod, Dave, or did you get the spay rod?
Spay rod.
Oh, nice.
Yes, but it's a short spay rod. It's a 12-foot spay rod.
Wow, that's not much longer than my switch rod.
No, yeah, my switch rod's 11 feet, but it casts like a spay rod rather than a switch rod.
Sure, that's cool.
And one of the things you learn on the Brule is, and for example, Paul's favorite rod up there is a 12-foot 5. You can't. I don't think anybody could cast a 13 or 14 up there. There's just no room. No. I mean, one of the things that Paul teaches is a sidearm snap tee.
Oh, that's cool.
And the other thing he insists on is you to learn to cast both-handed.
Well, that's actually good. That's really good.
Oh, absolutely. So it's actually I've been starting out from my lake place. So my lake place to his cabin is an hour and 45 minutes.
Oh, nice. That's good. Yeah. It's a bit far from the cities for a day trip, but that's not bad.
It is. And it's for me, it ends up being a 14-hour day. But, the drive, the worst part of the drive, of course, is crossing the cities.
Right.
So it's worked out very nicely, I think.
Cool. So I did not, if you notice, I did not trim this thing of filler flash. We're getting up towards the end of the tail, or the beginning of the tail, I should say. And so I didn't trim it, and I'm almost to the very top of the saddle, or end of the saddle, I should say. Because you look at the profile of fish, it's not one like let's imitate the bait fish, right? And fish aren't one continuous profile. I mean, they're not V-shaped, right? And so they kind of come up and flatten off, and so that's the effect I'm going for here. So the next few We're almost done here. So one more segment, then you'll see on the hook. It's more of a flat profile, if that makes sense, or a consistent profile is a better way to say it. So what I'm doing in these last couple segments, so this one and the next one, I'm really looking for feathers that are similar size to kind of make that profile. See, so we're getting there, right? You can kind of see the profile starting to take shape.
Where are you smallmouth fishing? Any particular place?
Yeah, I mean, well, this year's been tough. I've been out in the Mississippi up in by Monticello 3 times. It was kayaking and then a couple times on a boat with a buddy, and boy, it was a tough year. So that's my preferred is up there in the winter. And again, what I'm saying is not a secret. If you go up by the nuke plant, you can wade fish up there. It will be you and 7,000 of your closest friends. I should have taken a picture. I was up there last winter, and you look down the shore. You can see pretty far, right? You're up on this hill. You look down the shoreline. It was literally shoulder to shoulder people. Not many fly fishermen, mostly spin casting, and it's all catch and release, which is interesting. But yeah, it's once it gets cold, the nuke plant keeps the water warm, so there's fish there, but everyone knows about it. So again, I'm not giving away a secret.
I was up right in that area with Stu this summer, and this guy goes by in a canoe. And he had a lot of stuff in the canoe. I said, "Where are you going?" New Orleans. So he started at the headwaters, and he was going to New Orleans.
That's cool.
Yeah, I thought what a great thing to do.
Yeah, I've heard that areas around the plant's not great in the summer because the nuke plant discharges warm water, which is why it's great in the summer. In the winter. But in the summer, it actually makes the water a little too warm.
Oh well,
and
all
the
right.
smallest kind of move out. Except I guess on the intake for that, if you're on a boat in the summer, there's where the nuke plant gets its intake. I guess it traps bait fish there, and the smallies just slam that. But you got to be kind of cool because the guys with guns in the guard towers don't really appreciate you stopping in front of the nuke plant. So. But it's all super wadeable, so I would certainly encourage folks to go check it out in the winter. But it's, like I said, it's not a secret. Now that we have, Snowmageddon in October, I don't know, we'll see what November is going to bring. I don't know about you guys, but yesterday, well, even today, boy, I feel like tying days with all the snow on the ground. Okay, this is my last segment. We're almost to the hook, so thanks for bearing with me, guys. Okay, I'm not going to trim that. Okay, so now looking for the very end of the saddle, right down here, the biggest feathers. Like I said, if you're going to buy, now if you're tying the really small ones, like early on Dave was talking about the micro changers, more for trout, I would argue that you probably don't need or want a hen saddle. A hen cape would be fine. And those seem to be a little easier to find for whatever reason. Okay, just stripping the feathers off. Or stripping the fuzzies off, I should say. Almost to the hook. And then we're actually going to be done with hen feathers after this. We're going to switch to a schlop in here momentarily. Okay. Can tie this on. So, I mean, this is, again, you guys notice, I don't know what time it is. It's 7:30, so, I mean, these flies are not quick to tie, but, man, they look cool in the water. Like, I'm telling you, the first time you throw one of these in the water, you see it swim, you're going to be like, I need to go back and tie 10 more of those because that is awesome.
Hey Rob, how are you fishing these? Are you using these on floating, sink tip, full
Good,
sink,
good question. Yeah, actually,
6, 8 weight rod,
yeah,
10 weight?
thanks for reminding me. Okay, so first off, the rod weight depends on the species. I would say if you're fishing for smallies, pike, you're fine with an 8 weight, maybe even, and these are big flies, right? So I mean, but they don't weigh a lot. So I mean, if you're a decent caster, you can probably make them go in a 7 weight. But I would recommend an 8 weight. If you are hucking for muskies, I would jump up to a 10, to be honest with you. Um, they're big fish, and if I'm tying this for muskie, I'm using a lot longer shanks and probably tying much bigger flies. Some of those musky flies are insanely long. Um, so how do you fish them? So there's almost no weight to these, and the synthetic stuff sheds water, and so it really, in my opinion, especially if so it also depends where you fish, right? So if I'm on the Mississippi, up in Monticello, it's pretty shallow. I mean, there are some deep areas, but on average, frankly, if you fall down or you fall out of your boat, you just stand up, which is kind of crazy in the Mississippi, but it's on average 3.5 feet deep. So I would use a sink like a poly leader, a slow sinking poly leader to get this down. If you're fishing deeper, you're fishing bigger rivers, closer to the cities in the Mississippi lakes, you can use a sink tip or even like an intermediate sinking line. But yeah, you need something to get this down. Now, the other option is you can absolutely use, so this is unweighted. I'm not going to weight this tonight, but there's a jig style head you can make on this too. You can put weight to the front. And so, if you're, and actually if I was fishing up in the Mississippi where it is 3 feet deep, I probably would consider making a weighted version of this just to get it down a little bit. Because again, I mean, feathers and especially this, this thing, all synthetic, this is just you're gonna cast this out. It's gonna kind of just sit on top of the water and be frustrating. So either weight it or use a sink tip or something to get it down. Okay, we are done with our tail segment. And so this is what we've created so far. Right, so here's the tail segment. You can kind of see by using those different size feathers by moving across that saddle, naturally tapered, right? I didn't have to cut any feathers, it just has that kind of natural taper to it. So let's talk hooks. So really you have a couple different options. You want a wide gap hook on this. So, I'm going to use a Gamakatsu B10S, size 1/0. But for some of these, you're going to want a short shank hook. So a B10S, it's shorter. It's not super long, but when I say short shank hooks, I really dig in these Kona. They call them big game head or big game hooks, and they're really short, right? So so I'm tying that's the Kona and this is the B10S, and it's all relative. They're both relatively short shanked hooks, but if I'm tying kind of a stubbier fly, smaller fly, so like this thing has the Kona smaller hook, but it's a smaller fly, right? And this one a little bigger fly, and I want the length, and so I'm going to use the B10S. I don't know, Dave. What have you been using for the micro changers?
You're supposed to use the Kona for one thing. The micro changers have the hook on the tail.
Oh, you mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah, and so which when you think about trout would be a good idea because you won't get a short strike. But I got thinking about. I don't think that'd be a good idea for a steelhead fly. I mean, the wire is not very big. I could see a steelhead ripping a micro changer apart.
So, speaking of wire, so now we have to hook this to our hook shank. And my preferred method is to use wire. This is from a craft store. This is from Joanne Fabrics or Michaels. This is called Beetle-On. A fish is not going to break this. And if you attach it properly to the hook, it's not going to come out. This is 19 strand. It's super flexible. It comes in a couple different colors, but this is just straight black. and this is what I use for pretty much all of my articulation, and it has yet to fail me. But let me show you how you get that in, right? So you start your thread on the hook, and it is slippery stuff, and so I want to make sure I'm coating the entire length of the hook in the thread. Again, back to the bend of the hook. And how do you know what's the bend of the hook? Again, these B10Ss have the barb, and so right there's where the bend stops. So okay, so I take my piece of beetle on again. Do not cut this with your. This is tough stuff. Do not try to cut this with your good scissors. Get yourself offset cutters. Okay, what I'm going to do is, first off, tie this. Tying the strand. You notice I'm going all the way up the hook shank. Or most of the way, right? So I'm going to my tie-in point. There's a better way to say it. I'm really tying this in here. Okay? So then you take your tail. So I've talked about this in the past, but in other articulated flies, I would put a bead right here to prevent fouling. And what I mean by fouling is this. So, I don't know. I haven't had a problem with fouling with these a lot. Maybe it's because of the way the shanks are built. But what fouling is when you cast it, right, instead of swimming nice, your tail gets wrapped around your hook like that, and it fouls. So if you have, a lot of articulations have a bead in here to really prevent that. I guess I'm staying true to his pattern, so to speak, that, he never uses a bead in here. To be honest, I do think there are instances where you're going to get fouled, but I don't know. I think a bead would kind of ruin the profile on this one as well. It's a lightweight design, and so I guess what I'm saying is don't worry about it too much, but if it does get fouled, just don't be surprised. Okay. So I tie in the end of this, and what I do is I position this, right? So I tie in the end, and I just position it. So you don't want it all the way down up here, right? Because then there's no motion. You want a little bit of give, but not a lot. And you tie in this other segment. And what's really, you go back to the bend of the hook. So what I'm left with, as you kind of see, is a little bit of a gap there, just so there's some articulation. And then what I'm going to do is going to go back up. Oops. In the meantime, I can take this and get rid of this. Maybe this is overkill, right? And then go back down. So then the last thing I'm going to do on this, you can do a couple things. You can do UV resin here. Yeah, I'm going to use head cement, but I really think it's important to have a glue here to really kind of lock that in place. And don't be shy. Don't be shy with the glue. Because what you don't want is a short strike or something. And I mean, chances are this is not going to come off, but again, I'm paranoid. And so I want to make sure that that wire is really in there. And so this is, I'm pulling on this pretty good, right? That's not coming out. So that's really in there secure. And this is not going to break. Trust me. Your line is going to break before that, before this beetle on will break, because this is, it's thick stuff. Okay. So now we are going to go back to our polar or filler flash, I should say. So now we're going to build the body. I'm going to use a little different material, a little different color. So I had a white body. I'm going to make a purple head on this. Again, I think I don't know. I think fish like the contrasting colors sometimes not. I don't know. But I kind of like the contrast. And so I'm going to have a white tail with a purple head. If you want to make it all white, that's what you have. Do that. You want to make it black or something else, do that too. If I can get my hands on it, I've seen some really cool variant saddles out there that are really awesome colored, but I don't own any of those, so we're not doing that tonight. Okay, so I mean, you could use hen for up here, but I find So I've tried it with hen on the head actually, just to see how it would come out, and it's not as full as I like, and so I'm using schlappen, which is just kind of strung hackle, and this is very easy to find. It comes in many colors. So I'm going to use the thing with this is using a number of feathers, and so I'm going to use probably 3 feathers, and you don't have to. And with these, you don't have to worry about taking the fuzzies off. You can if you want, but I mean, we're not going that far. And so what I do for these, so if you look at the schlappen, these tips are really fine, and it gets pretty thick out there back there. And so maybe this is cheating a little bit, but I'm actually going to nick off those tips, those really short tips, because again, I want this to be pretty full in the front. See, so I kind of just nicked off the tips, and I'm gonna so like for example, if you don't have the ultra perfect schlappen that you see in the book, like I don't, what you can do is something like this to increase the length of it. And this is just such a long feather or feathers. I'm not going to use all of it. So again, maybe cheating a little bit, but that's okay. So then I'm going to wrap this to about maybe halfway up on the hook shank. And again, same drill as before. You're going to want to prune that back as you go, not prune. And I think the 3 feathers gives it the bulk. And this is what, Blaine Chocolate does in his book too. And I just think that it gives it a nice, kind of a nice bulk. And you'll see, like, I'm trapping a ton of feathers down, right? So just rewind it back out, preen it back, and try again. Okay. So maybe see, and I'm getting up towards the fuzzy part. So I'm going to tie this off. Okay, so actually I led you astray earlier. I'm not done with the hen. So I don't know if you can. Blaine Chocolate fishes a lot more than I do, so I'm going to believe him on this. He thinks adding what amounts to a pectoral fin really increases the strike rate. So hey, who might argue? So I'm going back to my hen saddle, and I'm looking for narrow or kind of the narrower, longer feathers. So I'm looking for, I'm going to make a couple pectoral fins on this. They're not very long, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip them off, actually most of the feather. So what I'm left with is something like that. Okay. So now I have 2 feathers about yay big. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie these in just to the side here. So where I want it is, actually I'm going to make it a little bit shorter. So I don't want it to really extend over my purple. And so I'm just going to make it, kind of thin it out. See what I'm doing? And tying it in so it just goes, it's just short of the purple. That's the other side. Again, I guess these are supposed to represent pectoral fins, and the contrast is important with the purple. I mean, if you were using a light color, you could do black for here instead. Pardon my finger, but so I'm just flipping the whole fly over and tying this in. Get rid of that. Okay. And then I go back to my schlappen. So again, you try to pick through. Actually, I have a couple better feathers here. So do your best to try to get, if you have a couple bigger feathers, again, not, if you get a pack of schlappen, there's not not all the feathers are going to be what I call prime feathers, and that's true for a lot of stuff. But do your best to kind of pick through and pick out the big ones. I feel like, I don't know, some of the old-time fly tyers will always say never buy any material unless you can hold it and feel it so you can see all this stuff, but I feel like so much has gone online, it's become impossible to do if you want to get materials. Okay.
Rob, that's the excuse to go to West Yellowstone.
This is true. This is true. Make the drive. At least for us living in the Twin Cities. If I lived out west, then that might be a different statement.
So I have a real question here.
Yeah.
Bob, what are you tying?
I do not have the proper feathers, so I have a variation.
Oh. I can't quite see it.
Let's see, let me get it to.
You know what? These are giant feathers. I'm going to take one out. I'm going to go with 2 feathers here.
That
Actually.
looks great.
Okay, so again, I'm preening it back. Oops. Sometimes schlopping can be a little. This is technically not schlopping. This is just strung hackle. But the reason I bring it up is it doesn't make a difference. It's almost the same stuff. And official schlopping, with the schlopping name, is a lot more expensive than what they call Chinese, or no, they still call it Chinese saddle hackle anymore. But it's strung saddle hackle. You save a few bucks on the package, and it's almost the same stuff. Okay. Sorry about that. Not my camera. There we go. Okay. Okay, so we're not quite done yet. What we're going to do is I'm going to tie this off, and then we're going to get our bodkin out again. We're going to pick out all those feathers that we tied down. Because sometimes it's just, actually before geez, falling apart here. Okay, bodkin, so before I whip finish, I got one more thing I'm going to do. So again, you just kind of go through and do your best and pick out all the feathers. Because you're going to inevitably bind a bunch down. It happens. All right, you're going to preen these back and form a little head here. Now, to make this $16 fly a $18 fly, we can be super cool. And if you have it, you could add on some jungle cock for eyes, which we'll go ahead and do that. I don't use this much, but again, this is for these flies. Why not? So I can teach a whole lesson on jungle cock capes. If anybody's interested in buying jungle cock, I'm happy to have an offline conversation with you. But it's they're not cheap. Probably the most expensive feathers you're going to buy, but they last a long time. And if you know what you're doing, you actually can get away with a lot less money than you think. So this is jungle cock. Oops. You can also buy fake jungle cock eyes, which are awful to use because they're paper and they wrinkle and they stink. So if you don't have it, just do without.
Rob?
Yeah.
Airline, real fake jungle cock.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I've used those before. Those are awful. And I have not gone down the rabbit hole of salmon flies and expensive feathers, and I don't intend to. But This is probably the most expensive on a per feather basis I own, but they look cool. And I use them very rarely, but I figure, what the heck, tonight's just might as well. And you'll notice what I could have done. I didn't, but you'll notice what these are called. These ends are split. Again, this is a fly for fishing, not for display, so I don't care. But there's ways to actually repair that with basically glue or UV resin. And you can actually UV resin this up too if you were so inclined.
Hey Rob, if you were gonna weight this, would you use dumbbell eyes or a cone head or? How would
yeah, you could use. I wouldn't. Well, okay, so you could do all of the above actually. So this is a really versatile system. You could do dumbbell eyes. You could do a cone head. You can actually finish this fly with some sort of sinking head. They actually make sinking heads for a variety of heads for this, and not just for game changers, but like the fish skulls, which are actually weighted for general streamers. So yeah, you can anything you want. I mean, really, the system is kind of starts behind the hook. So what you want to put on the hook is up to you. Okay. And last but not least, I will put some head cement. And you can take a paper towel. And so if you put a lot of head cement on, you kind of see that went right down the eye. Just take your paper towel and blot it out. It's already soaked into the thread. But if it hardens in that eye, then you're not going to have an enjoyable time when you get to the river. So that is a feather changer. So again, not a quick tie, but they look cool. Man, I'm telling you, like, go tie one of these up and throw it in the water and you'll be hooked. I mean, the action on this as you strip this through the water is incredible because this, it's not this. I can't even emulate it with my fingers, but each one of these segments moves independently and it legitimately looks like a fish swimming. It really does. It's pretty amazing.
Rob, I'll throw you a question.
Yeah.
That's a feather changer. And then he's got his finesse, which is tied with almost all of the thickly packed material.
And that's what this is. This is a finesse changer I tied up earlier.
Have you had personal success one more than the other?
I'll be honest, I haven't fished these enough to make that determination yet.
Because I'm thinking in terms of trying to come up with a version of this that's a creek chub, probably about 3 inches long for the trout in that last stream we fished on the last day of the season.
Oh yeah. So to be honest, I don't know. You could use either. I would be more tempted to go the synthetic route, and pack it in. Only because, especially for smaller flies, I think the chenille would be easier to use. Like, these feather changers are awesome, but it's I tied a little differently. Like, if I was tying it really small, I probably would dump the flash or as much flash, because on the short shanks it's really hard to get both the flash and the feather on. Whereas this is one, other than the tail, it's marabou. This is one material. You just wrap the chenille over and over and over. So I'd be more tempted to use this one for the small one. And it comes in a variety of colors, right? Or you can even get white and where's my hack job over here? So again, you can get white and you can color it up however you so desire. This is pink and black, and yeah. So
I'm thinking of a minnow gray color and then coming out with a bluish black for the top.
I think that would work pretty well.
And
like Gabe said, go ahead.
I'm an expert at catching creek chubs instead of trout, so I've got some pictures to go by.
You've got some representative samples?
Yep.
Nice.
If you look at, Bob, if you look at the micro system, that comes to about 3 inches. If you use that.
I'll keep myself busy this winter is what it amounts to.
Yep.
Cool, but that's it. Yeah, thanks guys for sticking in there. I know this was a long one for one fly, a lot of repetition, but these are cool flies. And again, so I hope you guys got an idea of the system, but would certainly encourage you to go out and do it yourself. Oh, let me mention before we go the eyes. So I think I've said in the past that E6000 is awesome, and it is. It's not going to go anywhere, but boy, it's goopy and hard to deal with. What I've been switching to lately, and it seems to work really well. I haven't been, I haven't lost an eye yet, but is flexible UV resin. So SolarRes makes a flexible, you can see anyway, it's a flexible resin. And the flexible part's important because if you look at this fly, right, I mean, it kind of moves in here and flexes around. The not flexible UV resin gets really brittle and hard and actually found cracks. But the flexible allows these eyes to stick pretty well. So I'm pretty happy with it. So it's a lot easier than waiting for glue to dry. And so anyway, that's kind of what I've gone to, and I really, really like it.
I'll say thank you, Rob.
Thanks,
Yeah, you're
Rob.
welcome. You're welcome.
Thank
Hope
you, Rob.
you guys enjoyed it. And we'll